Hello everyone, and welcome to another video. Today we are going to begin our section on the era of Reconstruction, starting with Lesson 1, Plans for Reconstruction Clash. Even before the end of the Civil War, Congress and the President disagreed about how the seceded states would rejoin the Union. When the war ended, bitterness between the North and South was compounded by a power struggle between the executive and legislative branches of the government. The issues that arose and how they were dealt with would have consequences for generations to come. So yeah, one of the major questions this time was, how do we get the southern states back into the country? You know, they fought us for 4 years. That was how long the Confederacy lasted. And what do we do now? Union troops celebrate their victory in a May 1865 parade in Washington, D.C. When the Civil War ended, parts of the South lay in ruins. Homes burned, businesses closed, many properties abandoned. African Americans, though emancipated, lacked full citizenship and the means to make a living. During the era of Reconstruction, which was from 1865 to 1877, the federal government struggled with how to return the 11 southern states to the Union, rebuild the South's ruined economy, and promote the rights of former slaves. There were all of these struggles that they were not sure how they were going to deal with. How to reunite the Union. To many Americans, the most important issue was deciding the political fate of the Confederate States. Should Confederate leaders be tried for treason, or should they be pardoned so that national healing could proceed as quickly as possible? And what should the process by which Southern representatives reclaim their seats in Congress? The Constitution provided no guidance on secession or readmission of states. It was not clear whether Congress or the President should take the lead in forming Reconstruction policy. Some argued that states should be allowed to rejoin the Union quickly with few conditions, but many claimed that the defeated states should first satisfy certain stipulations, such as swearing loyalty to the federal government and adopting state constitutions that guaranteed freedmen's rights. Freedmen's is a term that was used to refer to freed African Americans. Okay, now this shows the proportionality of the parties in the House and the Senate at this time. As you can tell, the red is Republican, the blue is Democrat, and the others are other small third parties. As you can tell, it was dominated vastly by Republicans. How to rebuild the Southern economy. The Civil War devastated the South's economy. Between 1860 and 1870, the South's share of the nation's total wealth declined from more than 30% to 12%. The Union Army had destroyed factories, plantations, and railroads. Nearly half of the region's livestock and farm machinery were gone. About 1/4 of Southern white men between the ages of 20 and 40 had died in the war. In addition, more than 3 million newly freed African Americans were now without homes or jobs. After the war, the land was the South's most valuable asset, and arguments raged over who should control it. During Reconstruction, some people proposed using land to benefit former slaves. General William Tecumseh Sherman proposed that millions of acres abandoned by planters or confiscated by the federal government should be given to former slaves. 40 acres and a mule, he suggested, would be sufficient to support a family. Many Northerners thought that this might also be a way to restore the South's productivity, reconstruct its economy, and provide employment as well as income for many African Americans. Not everyone agreed. Southern landowners rejected the idea that the government could simply give away their land. Many white Northerners worried that confiscating property violated the Constitution. Even some Southern African Americans felt that the government should pay white Southerners for farmland and then sell it to former slaves on easy terms. In the face of opposition, the dream of 40 acres and a mule never became a reality. How to extend citizenship to African Americans. The 13th Amendment freed African Americans from slavery, but it did not grant them the privileges of full citizenship. The former slaves hoped that they would gain voting rights and access to education benefits, and most northern African American people also did not have. Most leaders of the Republican Party, which at the time dominated the federal government, supported programs to extend full citizenship to African Americans. However, most white Southerners opposed the idea. They feared it would undermine their own power and status in society. Now this was the question of this day. How do we extend citizenship and full rights to African Americans? Now, this, by our modern sensibilities, and this is an important topic, this is an important concept for when we're studying history, we have to look at an issue in the past with how they would have seen it. We can't look at it with modern sensibilities. I mean, whenever we look at it with our modern day eye, our modern day brain and thought patterns, it's like, should African Americans get full rights? Absolutely. That is it. It doesn't even take a split second. Yes, of course. Why not? So, but back at this time, this was sadly a decision that was split in our country. Even after the Civil War, which was fought to end slavery, there were still people on both sides, geographically, northern and southern, that were on both sides of this debate. And it's a stain on our history that this was even a conversation, that this even had to be a thought. Like, do they deserve equal rights? Of course, why wouldn't they? So, as frustrating as it can be to look at it from our perspective, that is a sad situation that we are looking at. Okay, so African American voting rights in the Union of 1865. So as we look at this map here, the states that are in orange had no voting rights. No voting rights for African Americans in 1865 in the orange. The bluish purple is limited and green is full voting rights. So really only in 5 states did African Americans have full voting rights. Competing Reconstruction plans. Even while the war was in progress, Union politicians had debated programs for repairing the nation's political structure and economy. For President Lincoln, one of the first major goals was to reunify the nation. Lincoln meets with 3 of his top generals shortly before the end of the war in this 1868 painting by George P.A. Healy. Why might this painting be entitled The Peacemakers? Well, as you can see in this picture, these are all people. These are all people who are discussing. They're not fighting. There are no weapons in this picture. There are no signs of aggression or anything. These are just people talking. So this is why it would be called the Peacemakers. Lincoln's 10% plan. Throughout the war, Lincoln had felt some sympathy for the South and hoped that Southern states might easily rejoin the Union after the war. To this end, in 1863, he issued a proclamation of amnesty and Reconstruction known as the 10% Plan. According to its terms, as soon as 10% of a state's voters took a loyalty oath to the Union, the state could set up a new government. If the state's constitution abolished slavery and provided education for African Americans, the state would regain representation in Congress. Lincoln was generous in other ways to white Southerners. He was willing to grant pardons to former Confederates, and he considered compensating them for lost property. In addition, Lincoln did not require a guarantee of social or political equality for African Americans. He recognized pro-Union governments in Arkansas, Louisiana, and Tennessee, even though they denied African Americans the right to vote. Lincoln took the position that the Union was unbreakable and therefore the Southern states had never really left the Union. In his second inaugural address, delivered a month before the war ended, Lincoln promised forgiveness. With malice toward none, and charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations. Lincoln's second inaugural address, March 1865. Okay guys, that's going to be it for this video. If you have any questions, you know how to get a hold of me. I hope everybody's having a great day, and I'll see you again real soon.